你是不是也常常在跨年夜，或者某个特别想从新振作的深夜，在笔记本上写下今年一定要减肥成功，或者今年一定要存到多少钱？我们点燃雄心壮志，仿佛写下目标的那一刻，自己就已经变成了更好的人。但是通常过了2个星期，热情冷却，生活又回到了原本的轨道。你开始自责，觉得自己是不是太没有意志力，是不是天生就缺乏自律的基因？其实这不是你的错，真正出问题的不是你的意志力，而是你大脑里运行的操作系统。我们今天深入导读的这本书《原子习惯》，它最核心要告诉我们的一件事，就是忘记你的目标，把所有的注意力都放在建立系统上。这本书的作者詹姆斯·克利尔，他的一生就是这个观点最极致的代言人。他在高中的时候是一场棒球赛的受害者，当时一根球棒从他眼前飞过，直接砸中他的面部，他的鼻梁粉碎，颅骨骨折，眼球甚至差点掉出来。这场严重的意外让他陷入昏迷，甚至需要借由人工呼吸器维持生命。当他好不容易活下来回到学校，他发现自己被校队除名了，曾经引以为傲的运动天赋在一瞬间化为乌有。在这种毁灭性的打击下，如果他当时只盯着那个重回巅峰的目标，他可能会彻底崩溃。因为那个目标在当时看起来太遥远，遥远到让人绝望。但是他没有这样做，他选择把目光收回来，专注在自己今天唯一能控制的事情上。他开始实施一连串微小的改变，比如他规定自己每天必须在晚上10点前上床睡觉，确保大脑得到充分的休息。他开始要求自己每天把房间整理干净，让生活重新恢复秩序。在练习棒球时，他不再去想什么时候能从心发光发热，他只是每天提早10分钟到球场，重复练习最基础的挥棒动作。这些事情在旁人眼里看起来微不足道，甚至有点可笑。但是就是这些每天1%的微小进步，像滚雪球一样，在接下来的几年里产生了惊人的复利效应。他不仅重新回到了棒球队，最终还成为的是大学最佳男性运动员，甚至入选了美国总统奖章。这就是原子习惯非写不可的命运。作者是用自己粉碎后的生命，一砖一瓦重新搭建起来，才提炼出这套习惯系统。他不是在书房里想象出这些理论的，他是自己在最黑暗的深渊里，靠着每天移动1公分，亲自爬了出来。那么，这本书最锋利的一刀是什么？如果听众今天听完这集节目只能带走一个洞见，那就是身份认同先于行为。很多人在想要改变的时候，都是由外而内去思考。我们的大脑会自动分成3个层次，最外层是结果，中间层是过程，最内层是身份认同。大多数人的逻辑是，我想要减肥，这是结果，所以我需要去跑步，这是过程。然后如果我成功了，我就会变成一个健康的人，这是身份认同。这套逻辑听起来非常合理，但它在神经科学和心理学上是完全逆向的。因为当你把焦点放在结果时，你的内心其实还停留在那个旧的自我。你每天去跑步，心里想的都是，我真痛苦，我是一个正在强迫自己做不喜欢的事情的胖子。你的意志力在不断与你的身份认同发生冲突。当你的意志力耗尽的那一天，行为就会立刻终止。真正能带来永久改变的，是彻底颠覆这个方向，由内而外。你必须先决定你想成为什么样的人。当你想戒烟的时候，如果有人递给你一支烟，旧的身份认同会说，不用了，谢谢，我正在戒烟。这句话听起来很正面，但它隐含的潜台词是，我本质上还是个吸烟者，我只是现在正试图克制自己。而新的身份认同会直接说，不用了，谢谢，我不吸烟。我不吸烟这5个字，代表他已经从根本上重新定义了自己。当你把自己定义为一个健康的人，你走进餐厅看着菜单时，你问的问题就不是，我今天为的是减肥要痛苦的吃沙拉吗？而是，一个健康的人现在会点什么？当你把自己定义为一个作家，你每天坐在电脑前，你的目标就不是今天一定要写出3000字的伟大作品，而是，一个作家今天会打开文档开始写作。 你的每一个行为，其实都是在为你想成为的那个人投票。如果你今天读了一页书，你就是在为读者这个身份投下一票。如果你今天做了一次跳绳，你就是在为运动员这个身份投下一票。改变的本质不是在一瞬间达成某个巨大的成就，而是在日常生活中，透过无数微小的行为，不断为全新的自己投票。当选票累积到一定程度，你的大脑就会真正相信，我就是这样的人。这也照见了我自己身为内容创作者的生命经验。在经营频道的过程中，我也曾陷入目标的陷阱。我以前会盯着订阅人数，盯着每一支影片的观看次数，这让我感到极度的焦虑和疲惫。因为那些数据是结果，是外部环境决定的，不是我能100%掌控的。后来我决定放下这些数字，我问自己 ，Jenny， 你究竟想成为一个什么样的人？我的答案是，我想成为一个敏锐的说书人，一个可以陪伴听众探索思想边界的温暖朋友。当我确立了这个身份认同后，我的整个创作系统就改变了。我不再去迎合市场快速产出肤浅的书单，而是要求自己必须把每本书读进灵魂里，和书本进行平等的对话。我每天固定在清晨坐在书桌前，开始点燃香氛，安静的阅读和写稿。这不再是一件需要咬牙坚持的工作，而是我作为一个说书人自然而然的生命仪式。我的频道今天能够走到这里，不是因为我每天盯着订阅目标，而是因为我建立了这个能让我感到安宁且能源源不绝产出的创作系统。但是我读这本书的时候，内心其实也有一个部分感到不太舒服，这是我必须诚实和大家分享的私房观点。这本书把习惯的4个步骤，也就是提示、渴望、回应、奖赏，解析得太过完美，甚至有点像是精密工程学。它把人的生命简化成了一台可以通过编程来优化的电脑。它告诉你，只要把提示变得明显，把渴望变得有吸引力，把回应变得容易，把奖赏变得令人满足，你就能完美操控自己。但我有时候会想，如果我们把生活中所有的缝隙、所有的失控、所有的混乱都用这套高效的系统去修剪，我们是不是也同时失去了生命中某些最珍贵的意外？生命不是只有向前推进和自我优化这2种状态。人有时候就是需要颓废，需要迷茫，需要毫无目的地在街上乱逛，甚至需要明知道不健康却还是放纵自己去吃一碗深夜的拉面。那些不在系统轨道上的时刻，往往是灵感爆发的温床，也是我们感受到自己还活生生跳动着的瞬间。如果我们把自己活成了一个精密的机器人，行为永远正确，习惯永远完美，那样的人性是不是也变得有点扁平？这本书是一把非常锋利的刀，它可以帮你砍断低效的恶性循环。但你在使用这把刀的时候，千万不要把它当成评判自己灵魂价值的唯一标准。系统是为的是服务你而存在的，而不是为的是让你成为系统的奴隶。本集节目的最后，我不给各位任何具体的习惯养成清单。我想留给大家一个问题，你可以这周在走路或者洗澡的时候好好想一想。如果你现在要把所有的目标都拿掉，只看你过去这一个星期重复最多次的3个微小行为，那么你现在每天正在为哪一个身份投下选票？你真正喜欢那个正在被你亲手投票塑造成型的人吗？谢谢你今天的聆听，这里是 Jenny 周末来闲聊，我们下个周末见。Have you ever found yourself sitting at your desk on New Year's Eve, or perhaps staring at the ceiling in the middle of a sleepless night, filled with a sudden, overwhelming urge to completely reinvent your life? You open a brand new notebook and with a heart pounding with ambition you write down your grand goals for the coming year. You tell yourself that this year you will finally lose 20 pounds, or this year you will save $50,000, or this year you will finally write that novel you have been talking about for a decade. In that exact moment, as the pen moves across the paper, you feel an incredible rush of adrenaline. You feel as though simply by writing down these aspirations you have already stepped into the shoes of a better, more accomplished human being. But then, reality inevitably sets in. 2 weeks pass, the initial fire of enthusiasm begins to cool, and the heavy, repetitive gravity of daily life pulls you right back into your old routines. The running shoes you bought with such high hopes sit undisturbed in the corner of your closet. The French learning app on your phone sends you notifications that you continuously swipe away with a growing sense of guilt. You start to blame yourself harshly. You look in the mirror and think that you simply do not have enough willpower, that you are fundamentally lazy, or that you were somehow born without the self-discipline gene that other successful people seem to possess so effortlessly. If this story sounds familiar to you, I want you to take a deep breath and realize something incredibly liberating. This failure is not your fault. The problem is not a lack of willpower, nor is it a defect in your character. The true culprit is the underlying operating system running silently in the deep recesses of your brain. You are trying to build a magnificent skyscraper on top of a foundation of shifting sand. Today, we are diving deep into a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And if this book has one revolutionary message to deliver to your soul, it is this: you need to completely forget about your goals, and instead, focus every single ounce of your daily attention on building and maintaining a system. The author of this book, James Clear, is not just a theorist who came up with these ideas while sitting comfortably in an academic library. He is the ultimate living embodiment of his own philosophy. His entire life path was radically altered by a single, terrifying moment when he was a high school baseball player. He was standing on the field, completely unaware, when a classmate took a full swing and accidentally let go of the baseball bat. The heavy wooden bat flew through the air and struck James directly between the eyes with immense force. The impact was absolutely devastating. It crushed his nose instantly, fractured his skull in multiple places, and pushed his eye sockets completely out of alignment. The trauma to his brain was so severe that he began having major seizures, and he had to be rushed to the hospital where he was placed into a medically induced coma on a life support ventilator just to keep him breathing. When he finally woke up days later, his world had completely collapsed. When he eventually returned to school months later, he was heartbroken to find that he had been cut from the varsity baseball team. The athletic identity he had spent his entire youth building was erased in a fraction of a second. In the face of such an overwhelming, heartbreaking setback, what do you think would have happened if James had focused all his energy on a massive, distant goal? If he had told himself that his goal was to become an elite college athlete or to make it to the professional leagues, the sheer distance between his shattered reality and that lofty dream would have induced total despair. The goal would have looked like an impossible mountain, paralyzing him before he could even take his first step. But James did not look at the top of the mountain. Instead, he made a conscious choice to pull his gaze all the way back to the present moment, focusing entirely on the absolute smallest things he could control right then and there. He started to implement a series of incredibly tiny, seemingly insignificant changes in his daily life. For instance, he established a strict rule for himself that he had to be in bed by 10 o'clock every single night, ensuring his traumatized brain received the maximum amount of rest to heal. He forced himself to tidy up his bedroom every morning, using physical order to restore a sense of mental predictability to his chaotic world. When he was allowed back on the baseball field, he did not try to hit home runs or impress scouts. He simply arrived at the field 10 minutes earlier than everyone else, utilizing that quiet window to repeat the most basic, fundamental swinging mechanics over and over again. To an outside observer, these daily actions would have looked completely meaningless, perhaps even a bit foolish. What difference does a clean room or 10 minutes of extra practice make when your skull was just fractured? Yet, it was precisely these tiny, cumulative improvements, what he terms getting 1% better each day, that began to compound like financial interest. Over the course of months and years, these microscopic habits created an unstoppable feedback loop. He did not just make it back onto the baseball team, he went on to become an elite athlete at his university, eventually earning a spot on the academic All-America team and receiving the prestigious Presidential Medal. This is the profound destiny behind why Atomic Habits had to be written. The author did not invent these strategies to sell books, he forged them in the dark furnace of his own personal suffering. He used these micro-habits as the bricks and mortar to rebuild his shattered life from the ground up. He knows exactly what it feels like to stand at the bottom of a terrifying abyss, and he knows that the only way out is not to leap to the top, but to move forward by a single, solitary centimeter each and every day. So, let us cut to the core of this masterpiece. What is the single sharpest knife within this book? If you, as a listener, can only take one profound insight away from this episode to carry in your pocket for the rest of your life, it is this: identity always precedes behavior. When most people decide they want to change their lives, they instinctively work from the outside in. They view their personal development through 3 distinct layers of an onion. The outermost layer represents the outcomes, the results you want to achieve. The middle layer represents the process, the actions you take. And the deepest, most central layer represents your identity, the core beliefs you hold about who you are. The standard, deeply flawed human logic goes like this: I want to lose weight, which is the outcome. Therefore, I need to force myself to go running every morning, which is the process. And if I can successfully stick to this grueling routine long enough to lose the weight, then I will finally become a healthy person, which is the transformation of my identity. On paper, this sounds perfectly logical, but in the realm of neuroscience and behavioral psychology, it is completely backwards and doomed to fail. Why? Because when you focus exclusively on the outcome, your internal operating system is still running your old identity program. Every single morning when you force your body out of bed to go running in the cold air, your brain is actively screaming in protest. Your inner voice is saying, "This is miserable, I am fundamentally a sedentary, out-of-shape person who is currently torturing myself to achieve a number on a scale." Your willpower is locked in an exhausting, daily civil war against your deeply rooted identity. And the moment your willpower capital is depleted, which it inevitably will be on a stressful or exhausting day, your behavior will instantly snap back to match your true self-image. If you desire a permanent, effortless transformation, you must completely reverse the direction of the arrow. You must build your habits from the innermost core, working from the inside out. You must first consciously decide exactly what kind of person you want to become. Consider a simple but profound example of two people trying to quit smoking. Someone walks up to them and offers each of them a cigarette. The first person, operating from the old identity, says, "No thank you, I am trying to quit." This sounds like a great response, but notice the subtle language. This person still identifies as a smoker who is currently trying to resist a temptation. Their core self has not changed. Now look at the second person. When offered the exact same cigarette, they look the person in the eye and say, "No thank you, I do not smoke." Those 5 words, "I do not smoke," signal a massive, seismic shift in identity. This person no longer views themselves as a smoker fighting a habit. Smoking is simply no longer part of their reality. Resistance requires zero willpower because the action of smoking would actively violate who they believe they are. When you define yourself fundamentally as a healthy person, you no longer walk into a restaurant looking at the menu through a lens of deprivation. You do not ask yourself, "What am I allowed to eat on this painful diet?" Instead, you naturally ask, "What does a healthy person eat?" When you define yourself truly as a writer, your daily goal is no longer about forcing yourself to produce 3,000 words of a literary masterpiece. Your goal is simply, a writer opens up their laptop and begins to type today. Every single action you take in your daily life is not just a task, it is a literal vote cast for the type of person you wish to become. If you sit down and read a single page of a book tonight, you are not just acquiring information, you are casting a vote for the identity of a reader. If you pick up a jump rope and complete a single rotation, you are casting a vote for the identity of an athlete. True change does not require a dramatic, cinematic transformation that happens overnight. Rather, it occurs within the quiet, mundane corners of your daily life, through millions of tiny, microscopic actions that continuously validate your new identity. When the votes in your psychological ballot box accumulate to a certain tipping point, your brain naturally adapts to the evidence, saying, "I no longer need to force this behavior, this is simply who I am." This core philosophy deeply mirrors my own personal journey as a digital content creator. When I first launched this channel, I fell directly into the painful trap of focusing entirely on outcomes. I found myself constantly refreshing my dashboard, obsessively staring at the subscriber counts, and feeling my stomach knot up over the view metrics of every single video I released. It was an incredibly anxious and exhausting way to live because those data points are external outcomes. They are decided by algorithms and market fluctuations, completely outside of my direct personal control. One morning, after a night of deep exhaustion, I decided to completely throw away those goals. I sat down in front of a blank mirror and asked myself, "Jenny, if all the numbers disappeared tomorrow, who do you actually want to be in this space?" My deepest answer was, I want to be a perceptive, deeply authentic storyteller, a trusted friend who can sit down with my listeners and help them explore the fascinating boundaries of human thought and emotion. The moment I anchored myself to that core identity, my entire creative system transformed on a structural level. I completely stopped trying to chase viral trends or rushing out shallow, clickbait book summaries just to feed the algorithm. Instead, I established a new creative boundary. I promised myself that I would never talk about a book unless I had truly lived with its words, allowing its ideas to collide with my own soul. I designed a daily ritual around this identity. Every morning at dawn, I sit down at my desk, light a soothing candle, put on my headphones, and immerse myself completely in reading and writing. This practice is no longer a chore that requires me to grit my teeth and exercise self-discipline. It has become a natural, deeply fulfilling extension of who I am, a beautiful daily sanctuary. And ironically, the channel did not shrink when I stopped staring at the metrics, it grew exponentially. It flourished not because I focused on the target of subscriber numbers, but because I dedicated myself to building a sustainable, soul-nurturing system of creation. However, as much as I admire the sheer brilliance of this book, I have to be completely honest with you. When I was reading through these chapters, there was a specific part of my spirit that felt a deep sense of resistance, a quiet discomfort that I believe is essential to share with you as part of our conversation. Atomic Habits breaks down the psychology of behavioral change into 4 incredibly clean, hyper-logical steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. It analyzes human nature with the precision of a software engineer engineering an app. It tells you that if you simply make the cue obvious, make the craving attractive, make the response easy, and make the reward satisfying, you can effectively reprogram your brain like a computer. But as I sat with that idea, a frightening question began to form in my mind: if we spend our entire lives obsessively optimizing our behavior, if we ruthlessly trim away every single patch of chaos, every mistake, and every unpredictable human impulse to maintain a perfect system, do we risk accidentally losing the very things that make our lives beautiful? Human existence is not meant to be lived entirely on a straight, efficient highway of continuous self-optimization and maximum productivity. We are human beings, not algorithms. We are beautifully flawed, beautifully fragile creatures. Sometimes, our souls do not need to move forward. Sometimes, we desperately need to feel lost, to experience a season of wandering, or to sit quietly in our own confusion without trying to fix it. Sometimes, the most memorable, soul-stirring moments of our lives come from the complete breakdown of our systems. It is the spontaneous decision to stay up until 4 a.m. talking to an old friend, completely ruining your sleep hygiene. It is the chaotic impulse to wander aimlessly through a foreign city without a map, completely wasting a productive afternoon. It is the comforting indulgence of eating a hot, greasy bowl of ramen in the middle of the night, utterly violating your nutritional tracking. Those unoptimized, unscheduled cracks in our armor are often the exact places where artistic inspiration strikes, where deep emotional healing occurs, and where we feel the raw, unfiltered texture of what it actually means to be alive. If we transform ourselves into perfectly optimized organic robots whose habits are flawless and whose behaviors are always scientifically correct, we might achieve all our goals, but we risk flattening the colorful, multi-dimensional depth of human nature into a cold, monochrome existence. So, please hear me on this. Use this book as it was intended, as an incredibly sharp, powerful tool to cut through the heavy chains of destructive, toxic habits that are keeping you paralyzed. But as you handle this tool, never make the mistake of using its metrics to measure the ultimate value of your soul. Your worth as a human being is not determined by how perfectly you followed your routine today. The system must always exist to serve your life. You must never allow your life to become a slave to the system. As we bring this episode to a close, I am intentionally choosing not to leave you with a neat checklist of habits to track or a step-by-step implementation plan. Instead, I want to plant a single question in your mind, a question that I hope you will carry with you as you take a walk or sit quietly under the running water of your shower this week. If you were to completely strip away all your grand goals, all your future ambitions, and look strictly at the 3 minor, mundane behaviors you repeated the most over the past 7 days, what kind of identity are you actively casting your votes for right now? And more importantly, when you look closely at that person being shaped by your daily ballots, do you truly, deeply like the human being you are creating? Thank you so much for giving me your time and your presence today. This is Jenny, and you have been listening to Jenny Weekend Chat. Have a beautiful week, and I will see you next weekend.